folks. Larry Rolla here. I ended last week's podcast saying that I'll continue filling in some of the cracks in my life story and giving some answers to many of the questions that keep coming in. I'm going to try to explain what it was like being in my shoes, taking the path I took and doing the things I did after Tannenbaum threw me out of Yonkers. Now, keep in mind, at that time, it was 5 years since I changed my life around, and my mindset at that time was I was on my way to fame and fortune and doing the only thing I really loved to do, and that was racing horses and more importantly, keeping the promise and commitment I made to my mother and Tommy Lucchese. Now, I said this before and I'll say it again because I truly believe in cause and effect. Tannenbaum's action caused an effect that set me on a path loaded with psychopaths, mobsters, bottom feeders, real mutts. And being accused of something I didn't do and not be given a chance to defend myself, it started to grow on me during the next 4 years. By then, Lucchese had died, and Tannenbaum's arrogance became personal, and thoughts were going through my mind that maybe I should get rid of everything and just go back to the streets, to the life I led before. What stopped me was a letter I got from my mother. It was the last letter I got from her, and it said, telling me how proud she was of me for not packing it in, for not quitting, and that she loved me. And along with that letter, as she always did, there were two $100 bills in the envelope. So for the next 4 years of racing at all these Mickey Mouse racetracks around the country, making no money, eating bran mashes, pigeons, and grass, and anything that I could find, and ducking and diving and weaving and dealing, it was tough. But I took the 4 horses that I had left to Lincoln Downs. And it was there that I first met Tony Shula. Shula was a big, fat, arrogant jerk that thought he was a gangster. But he was Whitey Bulger, and he was Whitey Bulger's guy, and they fixed all the races in New England. And it didn't take much for him to convinced me that we can make a lot of money fixing races. And there's no real reason to go into detail now. So I'll just skip through it. The next 2 years we were together, we made millions of dollars fixing races, doing real well. But another thing that happened during those 2 years was I became addicted. It was a bad addiction. It was an addiction to betting sports, making the bottom line with most predictable. I made millions fixing races, and I lost millions betting on sports. The only thing that was left was excellent credit with the bookmakers, which allowed me to take a shot at them. with no money, which I did. I told them that I was going to go to Florida for a couple of weeks, buy a piece of property, and that I would call every week and get the line on whatever games were being played. And when I came back, we would straighten out whatever I won or lost. Well, after 3 weeks, I lost close to $800,000. I didn't have a quarter. And at that point, I had to make a decision. Either run away, kill myself, or just go back. And I went back. And it was tough. And after the threats of killing me and my family, we were able to strike a deal. And the deal was that they would make the $800,000 I owed them a Shylock loan. And that was based on the fact that I had lost millions of dollars to them. And I was in a situation in a game where I could earn big money fixing races. So the deal was they would give me an $800,000 Shylock loan for 2 points a week. 2 points a week, for those of you that don't know, is interest, 2% interest. And 2% VIG every week came to right around $15,000 that I had to come up with every week. And naturally, none of the interest or VIG comes off the top, so balance always stayed the same. And they told me that if I missed one payment 1 week, that I would I'd be in serious trouble along with the rest of my family. And they let me go. And at that point, I had to do what I had to do. And I did. And I fixed hundreds of races at all the major racetracks in the United States for the next 3 years. The end result was that in October 8th, 1978, I paid every penny back that I owed. And at that point, I was even with the world, except for the people that helped me along the way. Now, there were many who called in and texted and wrote letters, who said that I'm a bad man, I'm a criminal, and I'm the reason for the decline in harness racing and in racing in general. Some say that cause and effect is bullshit and that a real man would have handled the situation differently. And some say that my addiction was no excuse for doing what I did. To them, I say, I'm not proud of the fact and really ashamed of what I allowed my addiction to get me into. And second, put yourself in my shoes on a boat 5 miles out in the ocean and standing in 2 feet of cement. And the man that you owe the money to comes right in your face and says, I want you to tell me why I shouldn't let this cement harden and throw you the fuck overboard. So my close friends know of this story, but most of you out there don't. Naturally, there's a lot more detail I could have gotten into. And during them years, were the scariest years of my life. But the bottom line is the question: was cause and effect, Tannenbaum's action, the reason I did what I did, or is it a good enough reason to give me a pass? Now, there's one more thing I want to say, and something I really talk about. And I'm going to mention it because I mention my mother a lot in my story, and hardly any mention of my father. My father, I was his biggest hero, even from when I was a kid. He was my protector. While I was doing all of these bad things, he was the one that stepped in when my mother was beating me, trying to straighten me out. He was the one that stepped in and said, "That's enough, that's enough." And when I did turn my life around, wherever I went, from Buffalo to all the smaller tracks, to Yonkers, Roosevelt, from the beginning, he was there. I don't know how he did it. I don't know how he made it. But every time I turned around, whether it be Buffalo or Pennsylvania or Delaware, I see that 1950 Dodge pull up and my father get out. And he was like the proudest man in the world. He just used to sit there and stare at me, be at the races every night I had a horse in. And he was just a great guy. And what happened right after I made that deal, they hosed me off and brought me home, and I told my mother. And I said that I'll do whatever I have to do to protect my life and yours. And the only problem I think I'm going to have is the first couple of weeks to get in action and to make these VIG payments. She made an offer, and she said that she would sell all of the mutual funds that Tommy Lucchese bought for her. She would sell all the life insurance policies that she had for her and my father. And every penny that she had in the savings account, she would give to me to cover the first couple of weeks. Under one condition, that I tell my father that he had to go back to work. He can't be hanging around with me and following me all over the country. And I said I would tell him that. And I did. I made up an excuse that security at all these tracks were closing in on unlicensed people, that they didn't want anybody that wasn't licensed on the grounds. And he had to stop coming around and go back to work and help Mommy. Well, what happened was he just stared at me and became stiff and pale. And I just had to turn around and walk away. Well, 7 days later, my brother found him dead, sitting in the chair. He never did go back to work. He was so heartbroken, he just sat home in that chair for 7 days and died of a broken heart. Now, I didn't tell you this story for any other reason except to let you know what I went through. And it was that day at the funeral for my father was the toughest day of my life, sitting there next to my mother, who sat there like a statue with a tear halfway down her cheek that just never went away. I went downstairs and I never went back up. It was a 3-day wait. And I just couldn't get myself to go back up. And the last day, it was so bad that there were 2 or 3 of my friends that came from my childhood years. And I asked them to go find Tannenbaum, let me know where he was, and I was going to kill him. And I'm not a tough guy, and I'm not a killer. I never killed anybody or anything in my life. But that's my story. Now, the next podcast I do, I'm going to let you know some of the people who know of the story and gave me a pass. And it's second chance in the only business that I knew and loved, and that was horse racing. I'll also tell you some of the people that didn't give me the pass. And that'll be next week. Until then, stay well, and I'll see you.